Welcome to Rooted to Thrive, conversations to elevate our humanity. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson-Ansari, Professor P for short. This is your podcast sanctuary for cultivating mindsets and skills to elevate our shared humanity. We're taking a deep dive into practical strategies to evolve as anti-racist, culturally competent, and inclusive individuals and leaders. In each episode, we're bringing you real-world examples and actionable takeaways. We're going to talk about personal growth, fostering connection, and creating positive change that dismantles systemic barriers and creates environments where all of us are valued, empowered, and activate our collective power. This is Rooted to Thrive. Hello. It's Rooted to Thrive time again. Thanks for joining us on the Rooted to Thrive Conversations to Elevate Our Humanity podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson-Ansari, aka Professor P. Today, we have Alyssa Reynoso-Morris, author, educator, and mother, owner of Alyssa Writes, LLC, which includes, her company includes author coaching and consulting, author visits, and basically in her consulting and coaching, she helps other authors navigate the traditional publishing industry. Now, I first met Alyssa as a student at Arcadia University. I spent the longest period of time at Arcadia. So a lot of brilliant people who are blessing this world in such an affirming and justice-centered world, who will be on this podcast. I met at that location, yes, because I was there quite a bit. But this is what's key. Alyssa started a nonprofit. I think it was called Schools for Sustainability.
You got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I got it.
Yeah.
And excuse me. I think you started it with someone else, but regardless of all of that, they did a workshop at one point on telling your story. And it's something called public narrative. And so I created something called the story of self for myself because of Alyssa. I learned how to tell my story based on work this woman did in my life, right? So oftentimes as educators, we focus on what students are learning from us. How about the students were the teachers for me? And I even blessed other people by teaching them that strategy and then taking them with her to Dominican Republic. And we started building, we built some kind of filtration system an aquaponic system. That's
there
what
you go. Aquaponics. Yep.
The name, listen, y'all, I don't even know what I was building, but I
This
helped.
was a while ago. I'm impressed.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah.
We were in a village in DR and helped support people there. We did some surveying, right? And just loved up on the people. We was just hanging out in the village nearby. It was a wonderful experience, and I owe that to Alyssa. Yes.
It was teamwork.
Yes,
Hands
it was.
down, probably one of the best experiences of my life, period.
Yes. Obviously unforgettable for me too. Well, thank you again and again for joining me today. How you doing today?
I'm good. It's funny. It's been a while since we've talked, but it feels, in some ways, it doesn't feel like that much time. Because, when you're in that like social justice space, thinking about all the amazing work that we're doing in the world, like you just pick it up and you're just like, yeah, we're We're trying to make the world a better place, right? And that
Yes.
doesn't stop, right?
That's
So
right. It doesn't stop. It doesn't
yeah.
stop. Well, I am so, this is going to be, I know we're going to rock this conversation because, we're going to talk about love letters to our children. Yes, love
Yes.
letters to our children. How reading and writing diverse books and literature can help us become anti oppressive individuals and culturally competent leaders and educators. Alyssa, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank
And
you for having me.
yes, and to get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in this work?
Absolutely. It has not been a linear journey by any means. But what I will say is it started since I was a little girl. When I was 7 years old, I realized I don't know how, I don't know when, but one day I'm going to be an author. And it was because of my grandmother. My grandmother was the best storyteller in the whole wide world. And I just thought it was so cool how, you could be having the worst day in the world, and then she would pull out one of her famous stories and just brighten up your whole day. And I thought that's like such a cool superpower, right? To be able to make the world a better place and make people feel better with just your words. Like, what is this? This is insanity. And I just thought, man, I want to be just like my grandmom. And then when I went to school, I grew up in the Bronx, New York. I'm Dominican and Puerto Rican. And so storytelling was always like oral storytelling is how we told and shared and all this amazing stuff. But then I went to school and I like started reading books. Well, reading books, right? And I was like, man, it would be so cool if I could take some of these stories that my grandmom shares with me and I can write some of them down because at the moment my grandmom can only share her stories on her block, right? Like in her community, in her neighborhood. But if one day I become an author, I can share our stories and our culture and just the way that she made people feel with the world. And so that had always been a goal of mine since I was 7 years old. But life did what life does, right? It pulled me in a bunch of different directions that I'm happy and grateful for. I worked in the nonprofit sector, I worked in the for-profit sector. As you mentioned, we were doing sustainability work in the Dominican Republic, building aquaponic systems. So all of those amazing experiences contributed to me realizing that no matter what I do, storytelling is at the core of everything that I do. Because when I'm trying to connect with people in the nonprofit sector, in the government sector, we respond to storytelling. And then that kind of reawakened that 7-year-old Alyssa dream back in me, if that makes sense.
I
Like I
love
did all this
that.
other stuff, but I came back to that origin. And now I'm excited to do it, to publish just diverse books that showcase culture and that make Black and brown kids proud of who they are.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So there's the storytelling piece, but then there's also what the content of it, right?
Right.
Yes, right. And I'm going to delve into the content
Let's
itself.
do it. Let's do
But
it.
right, but I'm so glad you just mentioned that. That I don't know, it just touched me when you said that your grandmother was like the best storyteller ever. And so I'm a Gigi now, and that just made me, and I was thinking about my grandchildren. So I have eight. And yes.
Whoa.
And-
Amazing.
yes, from six to 22 as
What?
of today, actually. Yes, one of them
Stop.
has a birthday today.
Wow.
And
Awesome. Congrats.
but thank you, but some of them are Black and Puerto Rican, right? Or African American and Puerto Rican. And as I think about what you've published, right, I always think about my multiracial, biracial grandbabies, right? Seeing themselves
Right.
in
Yeah.
these books, right? And that it's so special to have books that were written by people I know. Come on now.
Yeah.
Okay, like I don't even have to read the cover to know that the quality that's going to come from that. But thinking about just them having an experience I didn't have.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
grew up in the 70s, our books in schools, even some outside of school, right? In our families and communities, even at the library, did not represent us. And I wonder how different my life journey might have been had I seen myself more in those
Absolutely.
spaces. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I and that's at the forefront of every time I sit down to write. I
Mm-hmm.
think of what would my life look like if I had access to these books, and I kind of sort of get a adjacent answer as a mom because my daughter is reading already. And she tells me all the time, she's like, I'm going to be a doctor, a veterinarian, and an author. And I'm like, yes, yes to all the things, right? And there's not this, if she does one day want to become an author, I can actually guide her through that process. Whereas when I wanted to be an author, I had to put that dream to the side because I didn't know any authors that looked like me. When I tried to write, I didn't know even where to start. The process is very challenging. Publishing is a very competitive industry where only 1% of submitted manuscripts are actually published, traditionally published. And of that 1%, only 35% are written by BIPOC folks. So, and then when you break that down even more, it's like 13% are African American and 8% are Latinx. And as a Black Latina, they don't even keep stats on us that are in that intersection, right? So
Right.
it's hard. And I know that it's a worthwhile journey, even though I didn't have the models. And now my daughter has models, and half her
Yes.
library consists of books that are signed, right? So like just in her mind, nothing is impossible, which is
That's
not
right.
something I had growing up, right? Like
Right.
for me, it was like you become a doctor, a teacher, or a lawyer. Those were my three
Mhm.
options, right? Like that's it. Whereas like my daughter, whatever she wants to be, it's like, okay, let's do it, right? And that's the feeling that I want kids to get when they read my books. I want them to know that they are limitless,
Mm.
that they are enough, that they are unstoppable, and that they are loved.
Yes. Limitless, enough, unstoppable, and loved. I love it. I love it. Well, let's start digging into that, right?
Let's
And
do
maybe
it.
you can tell us about some of the titles. So, we said our topic today was love letters to our
Yeah.
children, how that reading and writing the books can help us become anti-oppressive individuals or leaders or educators. Let's just start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my
Yeah.
first book is called Platanos Are Love.
Mhm.
And the origin story of that book was Platanos was my daughter's first solid food. And so I was so excited that a tostón was her first solid food. And so naturally, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta like teach her all the things about plátanos. So I went online and I Googled and I'm like, okay, like books about Platanos. And back when I started, like when I originally drafted it back in 2020, there were zero books about Platanos. And to me, I know, to me, I thought it's wild because people all over Latin America, Central America, the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, literally all over the world, we eat plátanos. And so it just didn't make sense to me that there were no books about it. And then I took a step back and I'm like, oh, okay. It's because traditional publishing has had a history of not being diverse. You know what I mean? Like the industry is a business and they tend to not break the mold. They don't take risks and stories written by and about non-white topics are considered a risk to them. And the few times that they do take a risk, you know, there's a lot of backlash, like what we're seeing now in present day, where books are being banned left and right. And there's so much opposition to our books being in public spaces. And so, um, you know, it was like a moment of like, what? But then like, oh, duh. We live in we live in America and we have a lot of unresolved racism issues
Yes,
that
we do.
you know. So then I
Mhm.
was like, okay, whether or not this book sells or not, I'm gonna write it because my daughter needs it, right? And so worked on it. And fortunately I found the right home with the right editor because there are even though it is a book about food and a book about plátanos in particular, um, I tackle other issues within the text.
Okay.
There are like if you're as you're reading the text you'll there's a lot of reference to our ancestors and there's certain lines in the book that talk about how Esme's ancestors, the main character's ancestors, were not allowed to read or write or draw. And so basically like introducing the concept of slavery because a lot of people don't realize that slavery did not just happen in the US. Slavery happened all over. Um and so it's an introduction to these deeper topics wrapped up in the story and the resilience of our ancestors, right? Because if it wasn't for their resilience, if it wasn't for their love, these recipes would not have found a way to be passed down. Um,
Right.
like, you know, the oppression and, you know,
Mhm.
and it's, you know, it's a picture book. So technically the target demographic is a 4 to 8 year old. But at that age, when our kids look like us, they don't have a choice to opt in or opt out. They need to be exposed to these topics early on, but in a way that is still hopeful and encouraging, and so that they know that this is what happened. It's legacy, the legacy of slavery still affects us on a day-to-day life, but you have people that love you and care about you, and you have ancestors that are here for you and wrapping you in their love, right? So it's like
Yes.
that's like the line that I
Mhm.
walk with.
Yes. No, I get it. I get it. So many things just cross my mind. Just we're talking about this one book,
Yes,
right?
the one. And I
The
have more.
one, right. But so for one, for the people who are saying, oh, a certain age group is too young to think about or talk about the horrors of slavery, maybe we don't talk, well, a horror of it is that people were not allowed to read and write, etc., right? And that's important, right? That is important for people to know, right? That that was withheld from people. And when we, right, which speaks to the power of it,
Exactly. Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So there's a great life lesson in that for young readers, but then also it may be a part there. It's a part of all of our history, whether you are on one side of it or another, right? It's a part of all of our history. So we do need to hear it, but then there's also, I think people have images in their mind that you're going to just lay out, like what we saw in Roots,
Right.
people being flogged and stuff like that for or cutting off people's limbs for young children.
Right.
But no, there's a possibility,
It's an art
right?
form.
Right. It's an art form. Yes. More power to you. I am not a children's book. Listen, I feel like there's at least one book in me. It's not a children's book. But anyway,
Start with
more
that
power.
book, and I promise you, because you are an educator, if you read enough children's books, it'll come. And that's one of the main like pieces of advice for anyone that is interested in publishing. Read at least 100 books in that genre that you want to
Mhm.
read it, because then you'll see, okay, this is how they're introducing these topics. Okay, they're using these metaphors, they're using this like more poetic language, they're just taking a small piece of this big overwhelming puzzle and building on that. So I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could.
Okay.
It's late, but
All
it'll,
right. Listen,
if
I'm
you
I'm
wanted
happy
to,
to right,
yeah,
because I'm happy to stay in my lane.
that's true too.
Buy the
I'm
book,
here. No, I'm here if you ever
right?
want to, write
Right.
your
Yeah.
grandbabies.
Right. I could buy it, read it to the babies, all the things, right? Still. That's awesome. So yeah, so we're talking a little bit about how the stories could be that, well, they not could be, but they are mirrors and windows, right, for our
Yes,
children. I want to think about the adults for a little bit,
sure.
right? Like, so how do these stories, especially stories like the ones you write, how do they serve as mirrors and or windows for adults who are developing their anti-oppression muscles?
I love this question because I'm a firm believer that picture books are for everyone.
Um,
If our elected officials read picture books, our world would be a much better world.
hmm,
Period. And every time I do events, yes, technically my target audience is that 4 to 8 range, but 4 to 8 year olds can't buy their own books, right? So my target audience is also the teacher and the librarian and the parent. So I'm constantly talking to the adults, and they're always like, oh my gosh, I wish I had this book when I was a kid. And I can't tell you how many adults tell me, like, I cried reading your book because it was the first time I saw a big haired, curly, brown character, right? Like, I cried because the abuela in your story looks just like my grandmother. I cried because Santiago in the Bronx is my home look like me. And I like every time I've done a school visit, I have pictures of like kids holding up the book next to their faces and like, that's me, that's me. And I'm like, yes, 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 it is, right? And I'm like, after this, I keep it together during the school visit, but then like after I'm done, I just like start crying. I'm like, yes, and this is why I do what I do, right? Like this is,
yes.
and it's the same thing for the adults, right? Like the adults see a younger version of themselves in these books, and then they're excited to share the books with the kids in their lives because they know had they had these books when they were kids, their lives probably would have looked a little bit different.
Mhm.
um
Yes.
and so it's a transformational experience for all folks involved, right? Like the
Yeah.
adults see themselves in the text,
Hmm.
and it in many cases brings them to tears. But also in terms of, so that those are the mirrors, but in terms of the windows, for folks who don't see themselves in the text, they are able to understand and put themselves in our shoes and empathize with us in a way that maybe they wouldn't have been able to before, right? And so we need both of that. Um,
Right.
and they're able to say, when I meet with librarians and teachers, they're like, I know the perfect kid for this book. Like, I have a kid in my classroom that would greatly benefit from this book. And so everybody benefits.
I love that. I love that. Yes. Like developing your cultural awareness, your sense of social responsibility,
All of
um,
that.
through the mirror and through the windows,
Yes.
right? But added to the impact of the mirror is that it builds on your self-efficacy.
Yes.
Yes, right? Like you can
100%.
believe that you can do it and be it and all of the things. I love it. Yes. I'm even vowing right now. I have one book, but I'm vowing to get at least one of each of those books. Yes.
Yay, thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. And even in our own family, so I know of a young person who is fairer skinned or light skinned. I won't say fairer. I don't know, something about that word. But anyway, who would say, I'm not black. And I'm like, where did that come from? It did not come from their household, right? It's happening. And they are under the age that was happening under the age of 8.
Yeah.
And vehement about it as if it
Wow.
was a problem if you are calling them
Right.
that,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have siblings that are darker than them, like they're the lighter of the children. And when you witness that kind of emotion is coming up, we have to intervene. But that, not that it's too late, but that is late because a message got through.
Right. And now it's harder to counter that than if it had never taken hold, right? Like, and it's sad that it happened already, but the reality is it's going to keep happening because we still
Mhm,
live in this broken world, right? So like parents, caregivers are doing the best that they can at home, but when they
mhm,
go to school and they're talking to peers, all of this messaging is going to take hold. And then, especially once they're like teenagers, they listen to their peers more than they listen to, their family. And that's why it's so important to establish a strong foundation when they're young, because even though they might start to internalize these beliefs that are false, deep down, hopefully they'll remember,
mhm.
all of the things that were taught to them and that foundation that they had.
Yes.
But it requires shaking it up. Once those ideologies have taken hold, it it requires a lot of work, and
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
tough.
wow. It
It's
is
tough.
tough. Well, I
Mhm.
really appreciate the work that you have already put in. I don't even know if you are part of any larger movements or initiatives related to getting these diverse books or getting these, well, when we say diverse books, right, it's just a shorthand because I believe diversity, everybody represents diversity, right? But oftentimes the shorthand is when you're talking about non-mainstream, right, something other than what's considered normal, and we are trying to make it that everyone is normal.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. And I'm
Right.
actually rocking my "We Need Diverse" book shirt right
All
now.
right,
Uh,
good stuff.
so yeah, I'm a part of a couple different organizations. One of them is We Need Diverse Books.
Okay.
I'm a part of Las Musas, the Latinx in Publishing. So there's a lot of really amazing organizations. I share a bunch of them on my website for folks to connect with. And we do advocacy work on the publishing level, and we push our publishers to continue, you know, pushing our books and allocating the marketing dollars to support our work. We also work with teachers, educators, librarians, and help them figure out how to best incorporate our books. I'm actually this June speaking at ALA,
which is
American Librarian Association conference, and
mhm,
I'm really excited. I'm talking about how to engage and incorporate Latinx books into their outreach and the work that they do.
yes,
Because often what ends up happening, and I'm sure you you know what I'm about to say, it's like everything Latinx only happens between September 15 and October 15.
50,
Black History Month only gets the month of February and doesn't get love around the year, right? Like Women's History Month is March. And it's like, no, we need to be teaching these books year round
that's
because
right.
they have universal themes that can be used for other instances, right? So these books, while they feature diverse characters, are tackling universal topics like moving away or grieving the loss of a loved one, or joy, right?
Right,
Um, Identity, all of these topics that are universal, immigration. And so like in Platanos Are Love, the universal theme that everyone can relate to is that food is love,
mhm,
right? In my book, The Bronx is My Home, it's about having hometown pride. And ultimately,
yes,
it's about the main character realizing that they can become whatever they want to become.
mhm,
Who doesn't want their kid to know that they can become whatever they want to be when they grow up, right?
yes,
Regardless of
yes,
what the main character looks like. Uh,
hmm,
and in my third book, Gloriana Presente, the main character, Gloriana, is nervous on her first day of school. And so all kids are nervous on their first day of school. And so all kids would benefit from hearing this perspective of a kid who is nervous about school because everybody's nervous, but also because she doesn't speak English. She's an English language learner. And so for other English language learners, they'll be able to see themselves in Gloriana. And for other kids, they'll be able to understand what she's going through because they'll be able to see, like, it might be a little bit harder if we didn't speak the language. And maybe I should be kinder to this friend instead of, you know, potentially bullying them or anything like that. And I've had kids write me letters and say, they were bullied because they didn't speak the language, and they really struggled to make friends. And so reading Gloriana's story gave them the courage to keep putting themselves out there.
wow,
So, like, we shouldn't just silo these books to these months. They need to be read year.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And first of all, right, we live in life every day, regardless. Even if it was just about, right, like a particular group.
Right.
I mean, nothing is just about a particular group. There's
No.
always life lessons, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but if even if you see it that way, right, that the book, the whatever, the video, whatever it is that you're using as a text, right, is about a people group, yes, you should be talking about all different kinds of people groups all year round.
All year round. Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. And talking about all of those people groups is not just for the people, it is definitely because there's a void. There's that needs to be filled, right? And again, building on one's own self-efficacy among children whose faces and issues have not been in our curricula in schools and
Right.
maybe after school programs, before school programs, Saturday programs, etc. But then
Exactly.
also, right, and in their libraries. But then the windows are there for the children who don't have those experiences, right? So the windows have been there for children who are BIPOC, right? So myself, I can't even believe, given the difference in our age, that you had the same experience I had.
Yes. Well, and that's the crazy thing. When I was building my daughter's library before having her, this was like when we decided that we were gonna start trying to have children. I started building the library before that.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And I was like, how is it in 30 years that this hasn't improved? So like I'd had this a similar experience where I didn't see our stories on display. And then 30 years later, when I'm getting ready to start a family of my own, I'm like, how has the industry not changed? And it's interesting now that I'm in the industry, there there's still lack of diversity. Our stories don't reflect our population. But it's also more nuanced than that, in the sense that there are authors trying to get our stories told, but the industry doesn't always make space for us, right? And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where the industry says, well, we only really have space for like one Black author. We only have space for one Latinx author. We only really have space for one Asian American author, right? Like they don't say it like that, but that's basically what they're saying. Um, and it continues to be that way because our books aren't selling. But the reason our books aren't selling is because they don't know how to market to our communities.
Mm.
So for for us, it's there's just so much pressure because it's so hard to break through. And then after we have broken through, we have to work so hard to market our books to show that our books are marketable. And it's just, our books are out there, they're just not reaching our communities. And so the onus and the responsibility falls on us
The author.
to promote our books. And that's basically why I do the work that I do. Like I help authors navigate the traditional industry, but then I also help them market their books effectively so that it's
Gotcha.
actually landing in the hands of the kids that need them, so that schools are finding out about their books, so that
Mm-hmm,
parents are finding out about their books, because the books that are being marketed, the books that are getting a marketing budget are,
mm-hmm,
Diary of a Wimpy Kid. No
mm-hmm,
shade to Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's hilarious. It's
mm-hmm,
Dog Man. Like funny. My daughter loves Dog Man, but she also reads more than
mm.
that. You know what I mean?
Right,
But the
right,
reason why kids even know about these books is because they're the ones that get the marketing support.
right.
So, it becomes a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation. But the good thing is, our community is resilient. And the reason why we write books is bigger than us. And so that's why we're so motivated to not only write these books that the next generation needs, but to
Yes,
promote them so that they end up in the hands of the kids that need them, because we know the work that we're doing is bigger than us.
yes, 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 and yes. That's awesome. That's awesome. And you've given us so many practical things throughout this conversation to think about. But I do want us to, as we start to wrap up, talk about like anything specific you would, specific advice that you would give to someone, especially those who are trying to um, be more culturally competent, anti-racist in their practice. And we haven't talked as much about leaders. You started talking about politicians like from the gate, right? Like read some children's books
Yes.
to be better humans.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
would you, yeah, go ahead.
so you're 100% right. Like everybody, right? Like teachers, and who, no matter who you are, you will greatly benefit from reading. And there's
Mhm,
been numerous studies to prove that, it's good for your mental health. Reading before
mhm.
bed actually helps promote sleep. And there's all the like the biophysical stuff. But there's something that happens when you read. People that read are just more open. We're more able to have conversations with diverse viewpoints without it escalating to a point of like becoming hostile and violent, right? Like there's so many studies to prove that people that read are just more patient and more empathetic and just more calm, right?
Mm,
So that just benefits society in general. Like if we're having a conversation and we're not agreeing on something, there's a huge difference in being able to like continue to have the conversation, and you bring your evidence to the table, I bring my evidence to the table, as opposed to me getting mad at you, cursing you out, and walking
mhm,
away, right? Like and that stuff happens, and in a world that is so fast,
mhm.
we need more of those calm, deep, introspective, reflective conversations, right? um
Right. S-
because
s-
no go.
Well, I was gonna ask, so are they those who are showing up to the table more patient, right? And giving grace to other people to entertain different perspectives, are they reading certain kinds of things? Because there are a lot of readers out there who are still hostile and angry and,
That's
you
true.
know, emotional.
True. Yeah,
Like,
that's
I
true.
know quite a few of those. Is it a type of reading,
I do
or genres?
I don't have like the
Mm,
statistics on it, but I
okay,
do think the folks that tend to be more open-minded are the folks that are reading more diversely,
I see.
because they are able to see whoever they're talking to and engaging with as fully
Mm,
human,
okay, so,
and it's like it starts off with you and your experience. And before maybe you engage with someone in person, if you read about someone's life experience, even though they are different from you, they become a real person as opposed to just a stereotype, right? They become
right,
a real, full, actualized human as opposed to the rhetoric that you see in the media that is indoctrinating you to hating this other, right? And so reading about their experiences helps you see them as a real person just like you, that has feelings and experiences and value, and um then after you see that person as a real person, you can have an actual conversation with them. um so yeah, I do think it's folks that are reading diversity.
yeah, all right, right, and we meet, right? So again, there might be people, and when we talk about diversity, we're also talking about different sexual orientations, we're talking
Yes,
about different genders, we're talking about different, right, different
yes,
religions and so on and so forth, right?
right, not
Not
just ethnic
just
diversity.
race and
Yeah.
color, age diversity. Come,
Yes.
listen,
Yes. And
ability,
some
disability.
disability representation, right, Jinx?
Okay, we're on the same, we're
Yes,
here.
yes,
Excellent, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, there are so many different social categories, right, that we occupy,
Yep.
and some of us occupy those categories with privileges and some with disadvantages, some with both.
Yes.
Yes, it does help us. Yeah, I can attest to that. Help us understand someone who we don't share those identities with. It helps us understand, at least we hope,
Right.
their experience a little better, because there's some trash out there. We ain't
Yeah.
gonna
Oh,
lie,
for sure.
right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, I'll tell you, I have spent the majority of my adult life trying to figure out how, like, the experiences of different groups of people who would identify as white. Because I don't have that experience,
Right.
right? I don't even have the luxury of passing
Right.
based on my skin tone.
Right.
I don't know that experience. But if I'm trying to communicate with you, I'm trying to, I worked at predominantly white institutions on
Right.
purpose.
Right.
I'm often, now I'm coaching and doing all the things out in the world. I I want you to understand my perspective and my experience. I also need to understand what makes you tick,
Absolutely. And books help
right?
with that. Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
the books have helped me with that, but I continue to read.
Yes.
You know, I did a book review on a book, so this is nonfiction,
Hmm.
and I did a book review on a book by Bree Pickauer
Hmm.
called Reading, Writing, and Racism.
Oh.
Right. And there was a story in there, although she was talking about teacher ed programs and, you know, things like that, that would be important to me. What stood out, one of the stories that stood out was how she and another student, I think she was in her doctoral program, and she was talking about um, them taking a test, right? Some standardized test. And when she, as a white woman, walked away from the test and it was hard and awful, and she may have even, I don't know, failed or gotten a low score, her response was different from her classmate, who was a woman of color. And I don't remember if she was a Black woman. She might have been. She said that her white woman experience was how she was conditioned, help her walk away from a failure, blaming the test. And that the Black woman's response was to blame herself.
Right. Mm.
We don't come
But
out
then
of our
different experiences. Yeah.
right. We don't come out of our parent, our mother's, wounds thinking that.
Yeah.
Something in the world, people teach you that.
Yeah. Yes.
And it just was such a poignant story for me to even understand white folks. Like I was like, oh,
Right.
now I can see how you would not internalize certain things that I do,
Yeah.
right? I want more of that, right? I want more of what you have, but I also want you to understand where the world taught me this,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Definitely. And
Yeah.
ultimately, we're doomed to repeat history, right?
Yes,
Like
we are.
all of the immigration raids that we're seeing, ICE
Mm-mm-mm.
and the dehumanization conditions, all of our
Yes.
struggles are interconnected.
Yes, they
As
are.
a Black Latina, I am always at odds with a lot of my Latino folks because a lot of them vote from a religious conservative standpoint.
Mm.
Uh, and a lot of folks in my community, in my family, voted against their own interests because they have been conditioned to believe that, law and order and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but just because something is the law doesn't make it morally right. Slavery was the law, not right. Jim
Not
Crow
right.
was the law, not
Not
right.
right.
Japanese internment camps, that was the law, not right. And the
Mhm.
history continues to repeat itself. Um, and we're going to keep voting in and electing these folks that oppress us into power unless we read more and we learn our
Yes.
history, right?
Yes. There you go.
Um, and so
Mhm.
we're doomed to repeat it unless we learn. And so I'm constantly sharing books about the Japanese internment camp experiences because
Mhm.
people like to say, oh, slavery was so long ago. I was like, one, it wasn't. Let's do the math. It wasn't that long ago. But here's a
Mhm.
recent example.
That's right.
And this is something that can still happen now.
That's
And,
right.
it's reading diversely has enabled me to have that language, right?
Mhm.
So yeah.
Mhm. Yes. And on that note, we're going to drop the mic right
Yes.
on that note. Yes, I want to thank you for being so generous with your time. Seriously, your expertise is invaluable. I want to make sure people have a way to find you after this. How can people contact you or find you after this episode?
The best way to find me is through my website, alyssaauthor.com, ALYSSA, author, AUTHOR.com. I'm also on Instagram, but a little bit less so these days. So contact me through my website and I will get back to you.
Yes, and that's alyssaauthor.com. Again, I'm saying that again because when I searched the name of her company, something else came up, right? Like, so I was like, yeah, let's make sure that we get that website right on out there. Alyssa, this has been special for more than just the podcast for me. Like even though when you were a student, you were a political science student, and by the time you came to Arcadia, I was just teaching in education department versus doing the multicultural affairs work. However, as you know, we still created that village around all of our students, right?
Yes. And
You
it
had
was
to be
needed.
there.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, but you know, I may not have been the face of the people standing in the gap for you at the time that you were there, right? Um, you don't know what was happening behind the scenes. We won't talk about that today.
But that was
Um,
your legacy. Hadn't it been for the work that you set up, they wouldn't even had that office.
yeah, well, that office existed before me. We do have
Oh,
some people who will take issue with that, but it existed before me, but we all keep building, right?
yeah,
To make it better, right?
absolutely.
And continue and to sustain. Listen, today, so this is 2025 that we're making this recording. There is
Yes.
now a vice president, well, not a vice president, I'm sorry, a chief diversity officer
Hmm.
position, not quite at the president's cabinet level, but just below it,
Okay.
which is
That's
right,
amazing.
right, coming
Yeah.
from an
About
office
time.
that started as minority affairs way back when,
Yeah.
and it was housed just in student affairs. So
Right.
listen, we all keep building to get it to where it needs to be,
Absolutely.
right? Yes, and who knows, might be any day now that it gets to the president's cabinet level. Yes. So again, yes, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for the legacy that you are building, that you have left already. I have benefited greatly. My family will benefit greatly from what I have learned from you. And hopefully, all the people out in the world, including our Rooted to Thrive family, will be able to pay forward after hearing from you. So, again, I also want to thank everyone who has stopped by. Please leave a comment, subscribe, and share this episode. And thank you again for listening to Rooted to Thrive.